Thank you, thank you. All right, it wasn't even that many drinks in last night when I had a brilliant idea with some of my buddies from Opal, Matt and Ollie, if you haven't checked out Opal, check them out, to just start this off by just throwing money at everyone, right, and talk about the right incentive. But I didn't want to be the highlight of the event in that capacity with pennies in people's eyeballs. So instead we have the photo up, and we're going to have some fun today, I hope, as much fun as we can have when we talk about compensation, which I know can be a tough subject and pretty sticky. Let me give you just a quick background. Let's get to know each other a little bit, okay? So I run client success at Sprinklr. About 100 people running within that team at Sprinklr today, out of Austin, Texas, with the better-looking folks in that photo are part of my crew. So they are a lot of reason to get up in the morning, which is great. And what about you? Who here is actually in success, is a success manager? Good, good. Who manages success managers? People manager? Awesome, even more. How about less than 10-person team or a really small team? Okay. And then how about greater than 100? So a larger team. Not as many of those. Okay, so a lot of maybe in the mix there. Awesome, thanks. That gives me some context for today. So I'm at a company called Sprinklr. Hopefully there are some current customers in here. Actually, last session, SAP SuccessFactors customer, so good job you guys. Sprinklr helps manage conversation across social media channels, primarily ratings and reviews, gives one view of the customer to manage all of what we call front office experiences within emerging channels. On the right-hand side of that screen is what the success organization at Sprinklr is tasked to do. And they are in like order of importance, not numerically, but as the weighting of numbers go. So the first thing we really want to do is increase maturity of our customer base. And that means we're driving business outcomes at Sprinklr. The second thing is that we want to create customer delight, so our customers actually enjoy working with our products and our services. That means it helps them make money, reduce their costs, reduce risk. And then, of course, we want to retain customers. I'll talk a little bit about leading and lagging indicators on that. But first, let's talk a little bit about a story here. So here are the characters in the story that is success management, right? So I'm sure at all your meetings, this is what your team is like. Super raving fans, loving life, partying, all that good stuff, right? But what are these great success managers supposed to be delivering? What are the outcomes you want from these crew, right? Do you want growth? Do you want retention of revenue? Do you want delight? Do you want support, right, to help support customers through tough times? What are the outcomes that you expect from your success management function? That's going to be a key thing we're going to touch on today. Because really the setting of this story is this is their day-to-day. Right? So much to do, so little time. How can you possibly manage everything that you need to do? Well, what you have to do is set the right behaviors in order to achieve those outcomes, right? So what types of behaviors are you looking for to drive? Do you want a success team that's actively pursuing upsell or cross-sell? If that's within your goals of your company, strategic direction, awesome, maybe that's it. Maybe you want them to make customers really, really happy all the time and make sure that they're always satisfied and high relationship value. And so you are looking for that type of behavior. I mentioned it could be support, right? Make sure there's no issues, no bugs, and make sure there's satisfaction with the technology if you're in technology. And then oftentimes it might be just drive business outcomes. So help them achieve their goals. But all this is the behavior then that drives outcomes. So the plot of the story really thickens when you think about as a manager or a people leader, are you actually doing what you say you will do? So that's what that stands for. Do what you say you will. And what I mean by that is, if you expect certain behavior out of your team, are you motivating that behavior with the financial package you've put in place for your organization? Oftentimes, when the rubber meets the road, the default behavior is going to be for that success manager what is the least amount of pain for them as an individual or the most amount of gain. So those priorities, when you think about just wanting to take a nap because there's too much to do all the time, the default is going to be towards whatever you're motivating with most readily. And so that is, I think, where the biggest conflict today lives in the story, is that we really don't know what outcomes we want all the time. So remember back at the front end, the outcomes that are required for your team. And we've talked a lot about when I've been in different sessions today, right? Separation of church and state from sales and success, what's the right role. So there's a lot of other great sessions around strategically what to drive to. But I think the crux of compensation starts with delivering the right outcomes. And so the resolution on that is really to assess what are the outcomes that you expect for your team, right? What are they? Or say, I want growth in ARR, awesome, okay. So success can go ask for money. I want to retain revenue, great. So success can go ask to keep money, like stay, please stay. Or I want to retain logos, which is different, right? And I'll talk a little bit about the compensation package I have in place today and how that is affected by logos or revenue. But then there might be other things like I want to delight, I want to support, I want to drive business value. And of course, the list of things that you might want to have as outcomes for your teams may vary from here. It's just some examples. So let me give you a little bit of insight into what we do then today. Because when I looked at those outcomes, I see like leading indicators and lagging. And I'm going to jump back. And what I mean by that is I kind of was tongue in cheek, I want to retain revenue. Just keep give me your money, don't go anywhere, stay. That's not really how it works, right? Really, you're looking at kind of the bottom three things here as leading indicators. So when we focus on the team, we say, if you're increasing the maturity of a customer at Sprinklr, that means they are using advanced features that indicate for us that they're customer-centric, right? So really deep things that drive business value. If they feel very happy, so great, I have ROI on everything I'm doing with Sprinklr, but additionally, the people that support my technology purchase make me feel better about that decision, right? They don't annoy me. I enjoy spending time with them. They actually drive change. They help me look better to my boss. Then the output of that is the retention piece, right? When there's value creation in that model, retention. However, for us, I actually don't want to look at the first two as financial metrics for which I'm going to compensate my team. Those are just do your job. They have a great base package in place to just do their job, which are those two things. But I do want to have the ability to reward exceptional performance. So today, actually, we do a revenue retention plan that is basically theirs to lose as a success manager, right? So it's a variable plan that says, hey, if you keep the revenue within your customer base, right, a certain threshold, 100% achievement of that, great, awesome. And then there's 50%, 25% achievement of that plan. It used to be logo-based. And so this might be where you are. When we were a smaller company, 100 logos, that logo retention was such a huge deal for us. Now, 1,000 plus customers, logos not as much. We actually probably need to let some logos go. And so revenue became more important. So I moved it to a revenue retention piece. The only thing that's a little sticky that we do today, and strategically because of growth trajectory that we want to hit and sales and success collaboration, is I actually spiff through commission to growth on existing accounts. Now, it's a small percentage of the OTE, so it's about 10% of OTE is the target there. About another 20% is tied up in the variable on retention, and the rest is base. So it's not a sales-driven commission plan where 50% of it is tied up in commission, but I do incentivize the growth because strategically as an organization, we want to drive high revenue targets, drive that growth. But I don't, and I want the success and sales organization to have a lot of alignment on pursuing that and not feel like anyone is blocking something from happening within our customer relationships. So that's just an overview, and I wanted to go a little bit quicker to save time for questions because the output of this would be that we can talk about things that you might need within your organization to make decisions here. There's no, this is the answer. I'm happy to tell you the answer if you want to hear it, but it may not be the right one for your organization. So I'd love to know anything I can do to help in terms of outcomes and driving the right outcomes for success. Yeah. So the question was, is there any reason I wouldn't just give a regular base without any bonus structure in place, right? And that's a great question. I probably would. I could see many reasons why that would be great, right? So if you're going to look at MBOs for a success team that says, all right, I want to look at NPS scores to see what delight is. Personally, I'd look at participation rate of NPS, not actual NPS if I was going to comp on that, because I'd rather have 100% participation and really low NPS scores to know what to fix than have a couple of great scores, right? So I don't want the success team asking for, give me a great score. I don't want them asking, can you please participate? I don't care the score. So I'd look at that, right? I'd look at the right activity for the success team. Are they pursuing the right activity? Are they helping deliver outcomes that are business objective focused, not feature focused and technical, right? And that's just for the success organization. We have another org that does tech support. And so in that, I would say it's very, very easy to say, do all MBO driven and do a base, no problem. Where I chose not to do that is to reward exceptional performance. So I do want people who are amazing at keeping customers happy to be recognized for that. And I want to implicate the pain a little bit if you're not, because it's so important to me to retain revenue that if you're not able to do that, then I do want a little bit of pain there. So there's incentive to do a better job of understanding how to drive that business value. And the commission piece is, I think that's the stickiest piece. I don't know that that's a perfect model for everyone to pursue. I know a lot of people also do like percent revenue retained, do a commission on that instead of on growth. But I think there's plenty of cases to be made for straight, here's your base comp, and that's all you need to be successful in the role. Yeah. For me right now, it works best because of our company goals and what we're trying to achieve and how we map into that. The only thing that it can be complex. You have to make it really clear in your education of how the plan works, and then the enforcement of it needs to be pretty clean as well too. Now we're not going to say that there's not exception to that plan too at times, right? If something really outstanding happens in a customer, I know the success manager did an amazing job, everything possible. There's definitely been forgiveness often in those situations, but I want to try to make that not the rule, but the exception to the rule. So yeah, for us, we have 3 components. We've had a plan that was just 2-component based before as well. So we have changed that, I think, twice over the last 4 years. Yeah. Yep. Oh, great question. So the question was, how do I measure happiness outside of NPS? So I actually measure happiness. NPS is a weak one to me in terms of happiness. It's fine. Again, I kind of mentioned I want participation in it to really identify a few things. But we look at relationship mapping in the customer. So do we have an economic buyer? Do we have a champion? Do we have an influencer of the champion? And I'm looking at more the relationship health across the customer as a measure of happiness, willingness to take meetings, et cetera, willingness to expand. The other thing I look at outside of like champions within the account is the reference that they'll give, right? So do they participate in Forrester Wave analysis? Do they do case studies? Do they talk to other customers for us too? And tracking that is, you have to figure out the right mechanism to track those things. But I'm looking for someone who will speak on our behalf, right? And that's the actual lived out NPS. So those 2 things are more important than the survey ranking to me. I'm sure there's more, but I also don't want to over-engineer it and create really complex measurement structure to look at those things. So those 3 are the ones I use for happiness. Yeah, good question. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, I inherited one plan about 3 years ago, and I was a recipient of the plan, so I had the ability to change it. And so I changed it that's when I changed it to a logo-based with commission plan. So at that point, it was primarily a commission-based plan and no retention component. And it was more important to me to maintain as a success function. The way we ladder up in the company's goals is more the keeping revenue, not growing new. And so I added the logo retention piece. And then it was 2 years I lived with that until I changed it into then a revenue-based as the company had grown and revenue was more important than the logo component. So I agree, I wouldn't go flipping it around as much as you can even within the year, but an annual is a great time to modify and tweak. Of course, within our T's and C's, we keep it pretty safe if we need to modify a few things here and there. But I would say no more than annual if you can avoid it, if it's not killing you. Good question. Yeah. So, so the question was, how do I deal with exceptions, right? Depending on the era of the customer, right? The way we're structured today is we have like major or strategic accounts group that runs 2 large customers. We have enterprise, which runs about 10 to 15. And then we have a business, which is like the mid-market teams. So each of them have different thresholds of acceptance on churn and revenue retention. So that does help mitigate any difference between, a smaller customer versus larger customer. But when it comes to ability to keep the customer, typically I did say we forgive if there's like, man, it's just been a long cycle, maybe it's a year, it was oversold, and they've done everything right. But it is an exception. So if there was a customer that was oversold, but they have gone through a year with us, to me that's plenty of time to right the overselling that occurred. And so in that place, even though you inherit, everyone in the whole org inherited the customer. They didn't bring him in, right? That just kind of comes with the territory. So there are some checks in that, and like, hey, if you're going to lose a customer, it's okay. You can focus on other customers that are really productive and growing and healthy to balance that. And that's some of the checks that I like of having retention and commission in place, because you can say, all right, this customer, I know I could dive in and spend half my time trying to save them, but they may go anyway, or I could focus proactively on the rest of my customer base and probably increase their maturity, increase their adoption, and then by then they grow. And so it allows the success manager to make some decisions on what they're going to do. Again, that comes back to putting that comp in place to motivate the right behaviors, because whatever that comp plan is going to indicate that they need to do, they're going to do for their own personal gain or lack of pain for the most part. Yeah. Great question. How do I distribute new accounts and how does that affect? Just at random, alphabetically, typically. No, I'm just kidding. So new accounts, we do, like I mentioned, we have by group, so like major accounts. Where possible, I try to do by region as well, and then by vertical expertise. So you have to have a decent sized team to be able to do that, so you have to take that into account. And so for the most part, it is very much like I have the authority to say this is who you're going to take. Now I do talk in terms of how's bandwidth, this is interesting, what do you think? We have conversations with each person that's going to take over a new account. And for the most part, because of the culture we've created, everyone is willing and able and wants to jump on new accounts. If there's a tough situation where it's like, look, this doesn't make sense, or it's competitive, then I have said, hey, you should take this person, and then changed my mind and said, okay, fine, great points. You don't need to take this customer today. But what I try to do with the team is I typically try to bring new customers into experienced success managers and transition then like long-term customers to new success managers to allow me to bring in new customers to a really healthy relationship out of the gate, and then transition customers that we have a great relationship to someone new that they give some grace to, and they know, I love Sprinkler, it's fine, this person's going to be better for me because insert Y. They're closer to me, they're more aligned with my vertical, things like that. So that model gives flexibility to say to my best people, this person's coming in, they're going to be really tough, but I know you can handle them.
Last question. Go ahead.
Who's up? Yep.
So with the model you regarding, I'm curious how you good onboarding.
Sure. So how do I promote good onboarding with new customers in light of this plan? Is that what you're saying? Right. I have one caveat in the plan, which is within the first quarter of a new customer, you're ineligible for any commission on the account. So what happens there is like focus on getting them up and happy and running. And then once they're in that place, if there's opportunities to increase their maturity, do so. But that helps in terms of like the initial stages. The other thing too, though, is we have an entirely separate professional services organization that does the configuration and training and build that has a completely different compensation structure. Right, so typically we're not going to touch a customer in the success team like actively until they're done with their enablement and they're ready to go live on the product. So that also helps there too.